In this video, I will show how to configure MIDI OSC Pro. I'll demonstrate how to use MIDI OSC Pro to map the Akai MIDI mix to the MOTU AVB. The same principles can be used to work with other MIDI controllers and also other OSC devices. If you're working with other controllers or devices, then you can follow this guide to get started and understand the configuration process. I'm assuming that you've already downloaded and installed MIDI OSC Pro and also have the required configuration files. If you haven't already got them, then go to freelybits.net website or contact me for more details. Now, these configuration steps apply to both the standalone version or to the VST plugin. To keep this demo simple, I'll use the standalone version. So let's get started and launch MIDI OSC Pro. Now, when you first launch it, you'll get this configuration error message because it's not yet configured. So if you take a look here, this tells us the location of the configuration file. So we need to create a file at that location. So this is always in the current user's documents folder. So let's go to documents, and then we need to create a folder named Frilly Bits, and then a subfolder in here named MIDI OSC Pro. So the device configuration file should be stored in here. So I'm going to copy the configuration files that I've got and put them in this folder. Now, with that in place, if we return to MIDI OSC Pro, we can click Reload All, and then it will reload the configuration file and update the display here. So it's worth spending a moment to take a look at this configuration file. So I'm going to open it up in Notepad. It contains 3 lines. Now, the first line is the service address. So this is the URL that you use to access your OSC device. So in this case, it's my MOTU AVB, and you can see here that it's using this IP address. Now, with the MOTU, we also need to follow this with this information here. And this is just the service address that's used for OSC. And also you need to enter a client number. It doesn't matter what the client number is really. I've just entered a value of 42 here. On the next line, we have the command file. This defines the commands used by the OSC device. So in this case, this file contains various commands that have been created for the MOTU AVB. The final item to specify is the map file. So this defines the mappings between the MIDI controller events and the commands on the device. So it basically defines which MIDI events trigger which command as defined in the command file. Now, I'll cover how to work with these in more details in separate videos, but for now, these are the key points to understand. So you'll notice here that we just specify a file name without a folder. This actually means it's the same folder as the device configuration folder, which is defined here. You can enter a full path if you have a file in a different folder, but I'd recommend keeping all of your configuration files in the same folder. Also, with these CSV files, you can actually, if you want to, you can insert a semicolon at the start of each line to comment it out. This might be useful if you're working with different configurations and you want to switch between them. Okay, so once we have that in place, then we can switch back. If we've made any changes, we can reload them here. Once this is in place, then this configuration will be applied each time you use it, so you don't need to go through this process each time. All you need to do now is go to Settings and specify the MIDI input that you'd like to use. So in this case, I've actually got 2 MIDI controllers connected, but I want to use the Akai MIDI mix. So we just make sure that's selected and close this. Let's close this down. So now when I go to my MIDI mix and move a slider, we can see that the commands are sent to the MOTU AVB and the mixer is updated accordingly. So here I'm updating the high pass filter frequency, and also we can toggle the mute status. So there we have it. That's a quick introduction to how to get started with configuring the MIDI OSC Pro with your service, your command file and a map file. Now, in the next video, I'll cover how to make your own MIDI mappings. So if you're working with a different MIDI controller, you can use these configurations to define a map between your MIDI control and an OSC device such as the MOTU AVB.